Yeah, you know what that music means. It's time for another episode of All Over Voiceover with Kiff VH. I am your host, Kiff VH, and welcome once again to the show. I apologize for my hiatus. I've been in the process of getting my producing certificate from UCLA Extension, and not only in process, but I have completed. I am a successful graduate of the certificate program in film and TV producing. So I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about that kind of stuff. But producing is also producing podcasts. And since I've been making the show since 2016, I think, I was like, well, it's time to keep producing what you've been producing. I'm so excited to have produced today's conversation. I am joined today by the lovely, the talented Morla Gorrondona. We met during the pandemic, actually, in a virtual improv workout group, and then I was able to invite her to join a panel I just hosted at LA Comic-Con last winter, and she's just a lovely person, a wealth of knowledge and experience, and a true master of her craft. We get into that as we talk. And because I've been gone so long, I make up for it with a lot of conversation here. But we just had a great time, and I think there's going to be a lot of aces you can keep in this particular conversation. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with the spectacular Morla Gorrandona. I agree. That was the advantage of doing it when I started the show, 2016.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I was going to a studio called Global Voice Broadcasting. I had no idea how to do it, how to even get started. And then I was a guest on a show because of Richie Rich. And and I talked to the guy who was the engineer afterwards. I was like, what does it cost to do this? And if I just did audio only and blah, blah, blah. And the whole intention was like, I was relatively new to Los Angeles, relatively. I mean, 5 years, but still like, working my way up.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I did it in my home, in my closet, it'd just be weird to invite people I didn't know. So it's nice to have like a neutral, safe space, and it opened up opportunities, being able to reach out to certainly people I did know, but then other people who I didn't, but like we were at the same agency or whatever. And it worked out beautifully. And he did the whole thing. It was turnkey.
Ooh, yeah.
And it was $100 an episode, and I was doing all right. So I was like, yeah, all right, it's a small price to pay.
Yeah.
And then that place folded, and he sent me all the master files and how to do it. So I've just been self-producing since.
And ta-da.
And ta-da. Here we are, a year later.
It's funny you say like 5 years. 5 years, still new, 5 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like that the amount of time for someone to be new in a city in Los Angeles is like 5 years is for sure new.
Yes.
So what makes somebody no longer new? Like how long has somebody, and does it even, and is it even number of years?
Yeah. That's a great question.
Is it 10?
It may be.
Is it 50 projects?
I think people always celebrate their decade of being in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I think 10 years is a pretty solid, and like you've lived multiple cities, and normally it takes you about 3 weeks to acclimate to a new city, right? Like you know where your grocery stores are, you got your gas station, you got like that, and it's like you kind of get its number. But here?
Yeah, no. Yeah, and the Bay Area, too, was really tricky because I was just so overwhelmed in the Bay Area that all the surrounding towns were also major internationally known cities. And that was just kept blowing my mind. Like, I was coming, I had lived in New York, but New York is so... exactly. Yeah. Smushed. It's like I got my way. And it's on a grid. You figure it out.
Yeah.
And I grew up kind of going to New York every year. So I
really?
felt like I knew it like really well. Anyway.
Like how much time would you spend when it was just kind of like it was part of your landscape and you went all the
Yeah,
time?
my aunt
Uh-huh.
lived there, or lives there actually. Same place, West 11th between Washington and West.
Uh-huh.
And she used to own a piano bar, nightclub, restaurant on the corner of Bleecker and Grove called the Five Oaks. And so I grew up like hanging out there and grabbing the mic and singing with like jazz legends who
Oh
I
my
didn't know
God.
that they were jazz legends at the time. It was just like Ben Martini, Laurel Watson, Marie Blake. It was like, oh yeah, they're just people I know.
Unreal.
It was great.
How old were you when you were doing that kind of stuff?
Oh, like younger than 8. Younger than 8. And then like I spent my 11th birthday there, and then I guess it was also when I was 11 or 12, I signed with an agency in New York, a modeling agency, because that was my focus. That's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And so I signed, and then I spent a summer there, like the summer before my 13th birthday. That was so fun.
Oh my God.
I just kind of had free reign because it was the Village, and so it was basically the Village is like the Quarter, and the Quarter was never scary to me. So, because I'm from New Orleans.
Yeah.
So,
Well, why modeling? Why modeling? What was it about at a young age that was interesting as a career path for you? What was it about that?
I always just, I guess that's a really, I've never thought about why.
And and just a sidebar, was that print or runway or a combination, or just like when you're a model, you do it all sort of?
Yeah, it was kind of ready just to do it all.
Yeah.
And why modeling? I think in my mind, my vision of myself when I was little was always like an independent woman walking across the street in New York. Like I have this image, it was probably some perfume ad. This woman kind of like walking with her head flinging back as she was kind of like doing that model jump across some street in New York. And I'm like, yeah, that is what being a woman is to me. And so I guess I just also took it kind of literally. I was like, I'll do that. And then somebody at some point was like, yeah, you're really tall and you've got really long legs. You should be a model. I was like, okay. And so I chased it. I was like, okay, well, if that's something I can do, then that's something I was always intrigued by fashion shows and magazines. And I remember one of my sister's friends gave me my very first 17 magazine. And I guess it was her. I guess it was Laura Arnett. It was Cameron Diaz on the cover. I'm having flashbacks. Cameron Diaz on the cover, and she just pushed it across the table, and she's like, that should be you. That could be you. Have this magazine. And so she gave me the magazine, and I was like, yeah, that looks awesome.
Wow.
So I pursued it, and whatever. It wasn't like it was something, it was just kind of always something that I was chasing a little bit too, And I remember when I was 12, went to an agency and they were like, you're really at an in-between age right now. So come back when you finish school. And in my world, that meant college. And that's not what they meant.
They meant junior high, high
or
school?
Probably, I was like probably high school. It was like actually probably junior high.
Yeah, once you're done growing, kind of get past your formative years.
So I went back when I was in college, and they were like, you're over the hill. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
I just, because after I graduated college, and then I moved to New York, and they were like, "Oh, honey, no, you're way too old."
Oh my God.
I'm like, "Oh, okay," but I kept pursuing it anyway, and I was like, "Well, this probably won't be my great career, but that's okay. I can still like do the thing," and so and I did, and I kept defying them
Yeah.
and like I still like do a photo shoot. I'm like, ha, I'm very clearly not younger than 21, but I'm still doing it.
That's right.
And yeah.
What was your course of study when you were in college?
I have my BFA in theater performance.
All right.
Yes. With a highly focused on voice diction, specifically Linklater.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for telling me your past and reminding me. That was something that you talked about when we did our panel at LA Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And can you talk to that a little bit? Like your experience, not our panel. Our panel was wonderful, and if you weren't there, then shame on you. But but talk to me a little bit about what the genesis into Linklater, and then what that means to you, how that manifests, why it's so important, that kind of stuff.
I think about this a lot, and I try to give a very concise description of what Linklater is. And it's so much to me, and it touches on so many facets of my performance and voice and posture and approach, and it's so. But maybe I can work it out right now. Let's see if we can work it out right now.
I think we can work it out.
It's even what it's called is tricky. There's a book called Freeing the Natural Voice, and it's written by Kristen Linklater, who very meticulously spells out a process for actors, or anyone, but really actors, to lose our habitual behaviors when it comes to tension, speaking, breathing. And it's very much involved with our psychological habits, like things that we hold on to from stuff from like childhood. It's very much an undoing of a lifetime of habits so that we create a foundation of neutrality, so that whatever emotions we choose, we're actually choosing them. They're not being inadvertently influenced by our own thoughts, feelings, emotions, hang-ups,
past
right?
traumas,
exactly.
Yeah, those kind of things.
So it's like a deconstruction and then a rebuilding of your apparatus, your channel, your understanding your posture, your whole how to breathe. And there's a term that she calls like economy, like the economy of breath, which isn't to say it's like like little usage of breath. It's just the building a structure of the body in which the breath flows most freely.
Okay.
Without the economy meaning without additional tensions from external tensions. And it really is from like the ground up, and there's like a lot of floor work. There's a lot of like imagining your breath in different parts of your body, imagining your voice resonating like in your big toe. Like it's really absolutely thinking outside of what most people think about where their breath and their voice comes from.
Yeah.
And I was introduced to it because that's what the voice diction was at my school.
Yeah.
I started with Elizabeth Wiley, who is now, once she left academia, she's an incredible audiobook.
Oh, really?
She works in audiobooks. She wins all sorts of awards in audiobooks.
Terrific.
And then my second voice diction instructor was a Linklater designated instructor.
Okay.
And her name's Mary Coy. And she's just amazing. Like very much the taskmaster, very much holding you accountable, like calling you out on your stuff.
Yeah.
And just wonderful, incredible. Yeah, it was all at once changed everything, but also somehow spoke very directly to stuff that I did when I was a kid that I didn't even know. Like I remember vividly doing floor work with Mary at Ole Miss and like the Black Box Theater, lying on the floor, like the cold floor, and like doing this thing where she's like, okay, now like your breath, just let your body rise and fall, like just focus it on your ribs and just only that part, just like, and like I felt my body rising and falling, and I had a total flashback to being a child. And I think the laundry had been taken out of the dryer, was like on the floor, and I just like plopped myself on it and just laying on the floor. And having that same sensation, like, oh, what would happen if I just breathe here, and just feeling my body rise and fall. And I remember like the light coming through the shutters, and it just so vivid. It was like, I've known this my whole life. I just didn't know it was a thing.
Yes.
And it was it was a deeper understanding of a thing that I had a very deep understanding of. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. There's like this foundational understanding that seems at your core, and then to revisit it when you're not only older, but in a class setting where that's the intention, and then being able to expand and go there in a conscious way rather than a memory emerging, that isn't something that you're calling out. I had a similar experience with Rolfing, but with certain sense memories being attached to body positions and muscles and things of that nature.
It just all feels so like spiritual to me.
Oh, yes.
I do. I get emotional about it. Yeah. And so I absolutely carry that into my. I didn't know I was going to be a voice actor. I didn't know it was a thing, and it wasn't until much later. But I've always loved voice, so it's like crazy that I didn't know that I was going to be a thing. It's like been there all along.
Yeah. I relate to that 100%. Yeah. I mean, doing theater, in particular in college, was the first time I was really able to kind of be mindful. I mean, I did some plays and stuff in high school, but I was just imitating, what I'd seen in movies and what I liked, and, everything else was just, text analysis was like, how would Harrison Ford say this line?
Yeah.
That was the extent of it, but being able to dive into really having a better understanding, just engaging your instrument as an adult after you've, or as a young adult growing past that. Once you get over the hill as a model, being able to, then really being able to, attenuate. I don't know if that's the right word. It feels right. But really kind of get a sense of who you are and what your instrument is capable of. And the idea of doing voiceover work just seems like, I don't know. I mean, from Grand Rapids anyway, it felt like it was a world away. And but theater was always accessible. And, it was still like, I mean, all the processes and all that other kind of stuff that was enriching and satisfying and fun and, just changed the way you approach the work.
Yeah. When I warm up, when I still just like my some of my favorite stuff to do is just to explore all the cavities and the spaces and
your resonators. And
yeah. And one of my favorite ways, it's like kind of like a trick. I don't really like doing tricks, but it's like this on-ramp into the exploration. My favorite on-ramp is Dead Can Dance. Do you know the band Dead Can Dance?
Yes. I don't know. I'd be hard-pressed to name a title of their song, but I know of them.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So, like, what is like just matching Lisa Gerrard, but my really favorite part is to get into the sounds of the instruments. Those like so much ethnomusicology, right? There's like the instruments they use are not the instruments that we're here on our radios, right? So just like these crazy pitches and sounds and just like the notes that bend and like getting up in those different places and like feeling it expand and like just the tiniest little shift and how I go mad about that stuff.
It's so awesome.
It's like I would just imagine just like it just doesn't make it just like I don't know if it would even make sense to like, but to me it's like this whole world that opens up and I never tire of finding the nuance like well, now I've explored this part of the cavity, but what would it be like to explore the underside of my cheek? What would it be to explore like the back of my heart? You know, like this part of my lung. What if I focus all my vibration on my third rib? I love it. I love it. And then you can.
Yes.
Like, oh, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And it changes and it just deepens and expands what we're capable of. And then the real trick is like having all that knowledge and then finding the opportunity to use it in a character because maybe you can't always
yet and or you find it in a group where you're doing some group waller or something and everyone else is doing something that is that's in the median and you're looking for ways to contrast it and it's like, oh, I can tap into my my right knee and have that resonate
totally yes.
And I mean from my improv background, using that to create a character of letting okay, I have a chain attached to where my gallbladder is and that leads me across the room.
Absolutely.
That sense of mental placement is really, really powerful. Like do you how frequently, like, are you able to set aside like daily practice? Is it, that's for me, that's aspirational.
Yeah.
But like what's your, do you give yourself time to explore or how often is it part of, when you're in your booth in front of your mic doing your audition work or doing a session, like how much prep are you able to build into that time?
I mean, ideally, it's always an hour warm up, right? And then whatever because once it gets started, like it's always like once you get started, then it's like, okay, well, I'm only going to do it for a little while. And then it's like hours go by. It's like, oh, I totally got lost again. I got lost. And it's not, every day is aspirational. I mean to do it every day. And then, just
life.
Oh my gosh. And then the last minute auditions and then the emergency over here and so I aspirationally at least an hour every day, realistically always at least an hour before a session, always
Really?
If it's a session I gotta do an hour. If I really am on it, Like I'll do the whole, like a full body and voice, and so that will be like over an hour, but definitely at least an hour.
So how can someone now, if they're not in school or following, like, are there Linklater classes in the area? Do you know people who teach online or if someone is like, this sounds like the thing that I need, what's your recommendation of getting that education? Is it getting the book, finding a practitioner, getting in a group?
Yeah. Well, definitely the book. I'm rereading
Really?
the book with our dear friend Elia Mountjoy.
Oh, awesome!
We meet every week and go through a chapter, and then we discuss it. And it's really valuable to have someone to talk through it with.
Yes.
Because it's the text without having some sort of instructor is challenging. It's hard to understand, because she really does talk about every single itty bitty bit of the thing, and it's like she'll take 4 paragraphs to describe something that takes like a moment, just because she's discussing and describing every single aspect of it. But it's helpful to the Kristen Linklater website has like audio files that are specific to trickier parts of the book. She's like, okay, this is for workday number 14. This is the sound that, don't mimic this sound, but understand that this is the goal, but don't try to sound like me. Do your own, it's like very. Yeah. And then during lockdown, she did a couple of like, I guess we're going to do a warm-up. What else are we going to do? So she'll do like her own lead warm-ups, and there are plenty of instructors online that have YouTube videos.
Okay.
And as far as instructors, like Linklater designated instructors, surely there have to be quite a few in Los Angeles. I feel like I'm getting pulled in that direction. Like I feel like this is something I it just keeps showing up in my life, and I get so excited about it when I talk about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's like it's a very long process to become a Linklater designated instructor.
Do you teach in any other way? Do you like coach folks, or do you getting that? And you don't have to commit to it. Even if you want to cut this part out, we can cut it. I mean, it is one of those things that I started teaching at Second City in 1998. Like, there were no spaces of it. I got. This is my journey into teaching. All of a sudden, here we are. But here we are. I got cast as an understudy to the touring company at Second City, Detroit. There was a lot of us, and so we would go to rehearsals, and we wouldn't do anything rehearsal. We just watched the touring company rehearse, and I was driving up from Toledo to Detroit. It was a 2-hour round trip to come and watch people improvise and run sketches. And it was great. I was happy to do it. Never missed one. But the payment was free classes. So I got the first 2 classes, and then the third class was character, and it was just always full. Couldn't get in. And finally, Rico, the producer, was like, do you want to just teach? And I was like, you want me to teach? He's like, yeah, just follow the curriculum. It's basic Spolin. Just go. And I got my class. I agreed to it, and it was so, like, petrified. And then it went really well. And it was like, oh, this is something I can always do it. And there's real value in being able to share this. And I was surprised at how fulfilling it was in the process and how it made me better at everything. Everything except for making like speaker stands and things of that nature. But it made me a better improviser. It made me a better writer. It made me a better director. All those things.
Yeah.
And that was the surprising gift of teaching, to the point. I mean, I was, Flavor Flav to Scott White last night at a monster class. That was super fun, and I'm Chuck D next week. So that'll be a blast, kind of diving in and talking about group work and monster work and character intention and all that other kind of stuff. But yeah, if it's something that you're feeling pulls, I'd stand behind and give you a push. It really is great, and you do speak so. Not only like. There are people who are students of things, and then there are people who are zealots for stuff. And when you become a zealot of the thing, you wanna pass the candle around, and keep spreading that light around, if you have time for it.
I think it's there's definitely a call to do this very specific kind of training, like the idea of going to Scotland and training with Kristen herself, and like whatever. But there's like stuff that you have to do ahead of time. I think you have to like apprentice with a Linklater designated instructor for a certain amount of time, and then you have to like to get to the thing. So that's always cooking in the back of my head. As far as like something to do in the now time, I feel like I would really want to understand what it is that I have to offer that people can, aren't going to get, like that isn't already available. There's so many wonderful teachers teaching and coaching, and I just would want to make sure that it's something that I feel incredibly strong about, that I feel undeniably confident in.
Yeah.
And I think it is something having to do with like it's voice. It's it's like teaching a warm up, but it's something more than that. I feel like it's maybe it has something to do with like understanding your range. I feel like the work that I would want to do with people is super specific, help them understand like where their unique blockages are.
Yeah.
I've done workshops with organizations where I'm like, I get in there, I'm like, I feel like you're holding right here. Mary Coy, my voice texture instructor, would call it working out your gugas. So like find out what your gugas are and like help you like release there. Or like if you have a specific goal in mind, like I want to deepen my register, increase my register. Creature work is something that I feel incredibly passionate about, like that kind of stuff. Like how do I do like creature work and efforts and like be like there's so much improv involved with creature work.
Yes.
Like all the things that come in that are part of making a unique creature, while also being able to maintain a full register, like a full like multi-octave register, and not smush it. It's like you're creating nothing but rasp in your voice, like it's that like being able to be a soprano and do creatures, like how do we do that? And it's possible. It's for sure possible.
Yeah.
And that's so specific. So I don't feel like I don't know if I can fill a room with that kind of stuff. Like I don't know if I can teach like a group of people on that kind of stuff, because it feels so individual.
I understand what you mean. I do understand. I hope I look forward to the time that you are doing it, because and it has a lot to do with I'm endlessly fascinated by the desire to learn, in particular in our field. And that's something that it's why I do this show. But also like the hunger for more tools for the tool belt. It's so inspiring that, like, you know, people in later stages of their career are still seeking, I want to add this, I want to add this offering, I want to be able to tap. And it's like trying to get more plugins for Pro Tools. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of a thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's like, I feel like every book I read, I found I'm not intending to find acting stuff in it, and then I wind up finding acting. I'm reading a book right now because my son is about to be 12. And so, you know, we're getting ready to get into the teenage years. And so I have this book that I've had for a really long time that is meant to be read not just by a parent with a child who is in or approaching adolescence, but also by the child who is in or approaching adolescence. But also, even if you don't have a child, it's meant to be like, you can read it and think about your own adolescence. And like, because it's meant to frame adolescence as not a terrifying thing, not awful, not full of conflict, but actually a place of power and creativity, and that we as adults can still access that. Like, we can think about our own childhood and think about the ways in which we were creative, the ways in which we were vulnerable, the ways in which we were daring, unafraid, and tap into that, or the ways in which that was squelched within us, and like to like reparent ourselves. And I was reading it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an acting book. This is a book for creatives. This is a book for people who want to tap into that creativity that we all have. Like, we that, you know, we're all meant to like grow up and like be adults and like and taught to be careful. And it's like, no, as actors, we have to very much not be careful. We have to be incredibly dangerous. Like, it's like, it's terrifying. We have to be dangerous with our feelings, like, you know, and I know that sound like it's not really actually like be dangerous, but like yes, be dangerous.
There's stakes, and you have to be willing to risk those stakes when you open yourself up with a role.
Like, I feel like I need to be more terrified. Like, you know, like I need to like be more terrified and do it anyway thing. Like I need to, I feel like that I am not terrified every time I'm doing an audition is maybe speaks to like the fact like I've been doing it for a long time, or maybe it speaks to the fact that I'm just playing it safe. And so like that, I think I was talking earlier about this audition that I was working on last night, and I was just like, oh, I'm not getting it. And I had this moment of like, I think I'm playing it safe. And so I'm like, I gotta just push.
When this is interesting. I was playing back an old audition for a friend the other day, and it was a risk that I took and ended up landing I became the voice of IFC, and I've been doing that for about 7 years.
Amazing.
But the audition was literally like, we want the world's worst voiceover actor. And I did like a Stephen Wright sort of a pass, but then the second pass, I was eating a bowl of cereal while I was talking. And I was terrified to send that to Donna. I was terrified. And I was like, you know, I didn't think that they were going to drop me. I'm not worried about being dropped by my agents, but I am wondered about them going, are you out of your mind? And then you know, so, and I pinpoint that because it's like, how many times have you been that dangerous in your work? really willing to risk beyond the performance and vulnerability, but risking your relationships and making a bold ass choice. Where does that, what does dangerous mean to you when you go into those places with us? And like, like you say, like some things, like a spot for Applebee's isn't necessarily going to invite danger. But at the same time, like how does that manifest for you? Or can you think of some moments that have been like a key frame for you and be like, oh man, like that moment, that feeling I got when I did that, that's what I aspire to in my audition work.
Yeah. I know, I can feel the feeling. I can't remember what it was that I did, but I know the feeling of like, oh, I have my safe take, and I'm like, I'm just going to try something completely and utterly bonkers. And then I just did it, and like, I wish I could remember what it was. And it happens often, often enough where it's like, but like, it's always after the safe take. Like, oh, I got my safe take.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I don't know what else I can do. And, sometimes it's goofy, but it happens. I feel like that the resistance happens most often for me in creature stuff.
Really? Interesting.
And then, but also in like incredibly emotional stuff. So like the creature stuff happens where it's like, it's the sense of I'm opening my mouth and I have an idea about what it was that I want it to sound like, right? But also it's a creature, so I don't know exactly what's going to just like come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
It's like I kind of, there's some things where it's like, I can do, whatever. Yeah. But like if I'm like, oh, like just really just like inventing, there's like a moment where it's like, do I want to? And then I was like, no, just do it. And I had a director tell me once, it was like, I'm like, I don't know. I was already hired for the thing. Yeah. And I went to go do the thing. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make the sound that's right for the character. And she said, you already are the character. So whatever sound you make is what's right. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I just kind of try and carry that into,
beautiful,
especially with creatures, because it's like, I don't know. I kind of know, but there's also a chance that it might be something. You just open up that vessel, right? Just open up those gates, and like, I might scare myself. I might be a monster. I might actually be a monster in here. Yeah. Oof. I'm not really a monster. Like, right? It's like I'm not, but like, no, yes, I am really a monster. Yeah. And letting myself really, really be a terrible, awful, demonic something that I have that in me. And I was like, yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah. And letting it,
and just letting it go. And the same thing with being emotional, because what if I don't stop? What if I never stop crying once I start? What if I start crying and like we have to like shut the whole session down because I just can't stop because I tapped into something.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, do it anyway. And I've had that, and it's been some of the most profound, like most gratifying, most cathartic, obviously, but just like powerful stuff that I personally have ever done, where it's just like all, and I'm like, getting there right now.
Yeah, I know, me too.
It's all right there, and it's like, yeah, well, that's where it is. Yeah. And I had this, I was talking about this recently with a director friend of mine who has directed me in some of these sessions, where it's like, I know the moment where that unlocked for me personally. It's because body, voice, breath is so, all the interconnectivity of that is so, it is like a religion to me. It is like it is a spiritual journey for me, for sure. And I started dabbling in somatic therapy, and like I was having terrible pains in my shoulders. And I was doing all sorts of stuff, taking medicines, doing KT tape, getting massages, and it was just not going away. And I just felt it was like in there, and I was like, okay, I'll just try this somatic thing. I don't, say it can't hurt.
Right.
And I
tried everything else.
Yeah. And I did this thing where I like intuited my way into the center of the hurt and found in me I matched the sound of the hurt. I found like, what does this pain sound like? And like made that sound, and it just like came out of me, and like, I just I made this sound and found myself crying and just releasing it, and it was gone. The pain was gone, and I felt like giving myself over to that. It just unlocked something in me, and I'm aware that it sounds mystical and magical and unbelievable and super duper woo woo, and like, of course, the LA actor is like on the trip, and it also happens to be something that actually happened with me. Whether it's like a psychosomatic thing, whether it's like some sort of, like the body keeps the score kind of thing, right? It unlocked something in me so that I am able to access that in a way in my work.
Yeah.
That is it just shows up, and it becomes very I can and I also trusting that I'm not going to cry forever, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be forever. I am experienced enough to understand the container of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a it's something that Sherry and I talk about all the time, and so much of the stuff that she does in her theatrical life is, I do video games and commercials for a living. She does really powerful, deep mining and theatrical work, but has a de-rolling process, or some way to shut the window after doing the work. And I've needed to tap into that after certain sessions as well.
Sure.
Like, do you have that process to help you, or to guide you after doing heavy lifting, either in an audition or in a record session?
Not consciously. I think I'm just really I think I'm just so used to like self-soothing. Like I probably just
that's part of that process.
Yeah, it's just
100%.
like I have in the same way that I have like a bag full of devices and tools that I can use to get into whatever space, or to like access different voices, different emotions, and they're not all sad. I get so emotional in these things. I know. I'm like, I'm really not this sad all the time.
It's all right. It's all right.
I'm actually quite funny. No, really. Yeah, but in the same way that I have like my bag of whatever, my toolkit that I have for my self-soothing, whether that's like going for a walk, whether that's like listening to music, vegging out and watching mindless television, calling someone, writing, reading, eating a cake, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like whatever. It's all fair game.
Yes.
It's all fair game, and
Yeah.
there's no judgment on any of it, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a trip, like having, do like those sessions, simultaneously exhausting and satisfying,
Yeah.
and that feeling of, just the rawness of going into those places, and the thrill and the joy and the gift of being allowed to, just because so often a lot of the things that we do are not that. And so at least that's been my experience for the stuff that I get to do, and so it's one of the fun things I've gotten to do with, in particular with voice matching, is getting to do that kind of stuff that A-list people do, but just match them and then like have to find what their process is and try to mimic that process.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that stuff.
Who are? I mean, I know some of your voice match people who are say who they are. There's Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, I did him in Avengers Endgame, and then a variety of other places, and then also just for entertainment. Nick Cage I did for Grug on the Croods Family Tree, but then I also matched him in Renfield and a few other things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that was difficult. Renfield was tough because he was wearing an appliance.
Oh, yeah.
So it was trying to match him as if he had these teeth in, okay? And he was kind of doing like a comic thing. But my favorite was Harrison Ford and doing him in Call of the Wild. And I was his scratch voice for that. So we did, 6 or 7 sessions with a ring of producers and the director standing there, and and the this is the cool part of being a professional at this and having confidence in it, of walking into that space and then running the room. Like that was really cool. Was like I did a take, and then Chris, the director, was like, "Yeah, it was great." And I was like, Danny, give me one more. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like in that moment and being surrounded by, there's the producer from The Matrix.
Yeah.
Like and that here they're just people doing their thing. And then, I do Hanks and I've done a lot of Hanks for trailers and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I could hear you tap into it when you said
he's
his name.
always there. Tom Hanks is kind of always just sort of living under the surface.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, but again, what's fascinating and what helped me so much with that is sort of like really playing with resonators and figuring out where do these voices live and what's the emotional component behind it. And then also like with Harrison, I was trying so hard to get it in the throat, and it's not where he is. He is, but he's
like,
a little bit, but then also resonating up here in the sinuses.
Yeah.
And AJ's Harrison is so different. It's so creamy. He has like, because Harrison, like in particular in Star Wars and Raiders, the OG stuff, and you hear his younger voice. I don't know. It's an interesting distinction that I can hear in him, and that I bring more just because of the age and former smoker and all that stuff. And I will do more throat, but anyway, it's just fun.
Charlize is mine. That's I've been voice match for her on a couple of projects, so that's fun.
That's so great.
Yeah, she's the one that I've been able to get consistently for over the course of 3 projects.
Can you show me some Charlize?
She's kind of like upper sinus, like up here.
And
I would have to listen to it again to kind of find the melody of it.
Yeah.
But it's like this, it's not, I think of it like a sheet, like a tin foil thin sheet of air coming through. Because it's like kind of holding right here.
Yeah.
And it's up. And then it's definitely got like the gravel at the end, like, but just not like a lot of. It's not even like gravel. It's like it's like the finest bit of sandpaper, right? And it's like that she has like at the end of her lines. It's like it's less than fry. It's not quite fry. It's just the slightest bit of texture through breath. It's not like you know. It's like a little bit of ash or something.
That's great.
At the very end of her lines, but it's upper. It's like right here.
Yeah.
And then
How long did it take you to find her?
the first time, a while.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay. Then it's like you get like you do like the Rolodex thing where it's like boop boop boop. Because that's like what I did for Moss is the book is the game where it's like done narration style, and so I'm the narrator, but then I do all the characters within it. And so to do that, I just kind of have my little points, and I would just point to different parts of my body to like activate the different things. And so once you like charged the areas with the voice, all you have to do is touch it, and then they're there. So it's like the kind of like the Rolodex of things. So
fantastic.
Just find the placement, and then it all comes together. Yeah.
I met Charlize briefly.
Oh, how is she?
Delightful.
Oh, lovely.
She was.
So nice to hear.
Me and Chris Cox were voice matching John Goodman and Toby Jones, respectively, for Atomic Blonde.
Okay.
And we went to a studio somewhere in Santa Monica. It was a studio I'd never been to. It might have been a guy's converted, additional unit.
Yeah.
And we were in the foyer, kind of like literally like a breezeway, like a porch. And me and Chris is, doing bits, and we're, laughing it up. And then the director, I think David Leitch, stuck his head out, and he was like, "Hey guys, please keep again." And we're like, "Oh shit, I'm sorry."
Oh my God.
And then, so we had no idea she was in there. We just knew that they weren't ready for us. And then this tall, statuesque woman breezes past us, shoots us a look, and goes, "Boys," and left. And it was the sexiest, coolest moment. And both Chris and I were like, And then, he's like, "All right, who's next?" And we're like, "Okay, yeah. All right, sorry, didn't realize that your star was in there." And yeah,
boys.
it was very,
confidence,
very cool.
the confidence.
Oh man, it was
I'm gonna start doing that,
dude. It was like this old Hollywood, like Katharine Hepburn, Barbara Stanwyck kind of energy that was like, when confronted with it in its full, pure effect. And I don't know how many celebrities you've encountered, but like when you do, there is like this.
It's something else. It's just something else. Yeah. I also do a Katharine Hepburn. I do aging Katharine Hepburn. So I start like young, and then
So you start like Philadelphia Story, work your way down Golden
like,
Pond.
What is it, baby? Bringing up baby.
Yeah, Bringing Up Baby.
Right. So, really, darling, really, I can't understand why you don't understand why we go into on Golden Pond. Spencer Tracy was a wonderful man.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
She just ages real quick.
That's awesome. Did you ever do any like stand-up or bits like that or improv stuff?
I did lots of improv in New York.
Oh, really?
That was actually, well, even before New York. Actually, my very first paying job ever was improv. It was in Oxford, Mississippi. It was the O'Connor Theater project. We had a group called Hooligans. That was our improv troupe. It's called Hooligans, and we did like every Thursday, we performed at the Ramada Inn.
Amazing.
And like we got paid. It was wild.
Dude, it's the greatest. It's the greatest. Like, it's stupid and fun, but like, talk about being able to push up against your fear and then letting the audience's delight erase it. Like, there was something about my time at Second City when we would do improv sets after every show. That was like, and then again, in particular, playing with my buddy Randall Haar doing, we did a show. It was like for 20 people in the basement of a club in Cleveland. And we were so bulletproof. We were playing with this wonderful reckless abandon. And I long to return to that. In fact, that's going to be my goal for the rest of the year, to return to that space in this room, to return to that sense of complete lack of judgment and shutting that down and allowing the freedom of the creative entity that exists in this car to express itself fully and then shape it after.
What was it that you just said? It was great. It was like it was so good. I was like, I'm like, hang on to this, but I also wanted to follow every single word you were saying. That was so beautiful.
The idea of allowing. Well, we've recorded it. We can play it back. We'll play it back.
It was, but yeah, it was. That was great. No, it's the bulletproof. That's what it was. Being bulletproof. Like yes, that feeling. Like it doesn't matter what I say. It's all fine. It's all good. It's fine. It's like these are the choices I'm making, and right or wrong, that is the reality. This is the and like in the best possible, not in the like, well, this is the reality. It's like, no, I am making reality. I am making this reality, and it's great. I've decided it's great.
Yep.
It's great.
I think we just turned into Godzilla and Kong just now. Like the thought of this idea of if I'm scrolling through, here's the genesis of that notion. If I'm slipping through Facebook notifications or Instagram Reels, and then lately it's been a lot of Graham Norton and then celebrities telling you their stories or truths about acting, and I get a lot of Ethan Hawke right now. And Ethan Hawke speaks with such confidence about his acting work.
Yeah.
And I kind of hang on everything he says.
Yeah.
And that made me think, you get to a point where you become that level of bulletproof, and because you said it, it's true.
Yes. I fully agree. It's just, yes. And I feel like I find myself going like, yeah, I know that's the thing. I know that's the truth. I know just the saying it makes it so.
Yeah.
So what's the trick to just saying it and making it so?
Well, I mean, this is a town that runs on confidence.
100%.
Confidence is the X factor for everything.
Right.
Confidence is the thing that makes you walk out of a room and go, boys, versus, excuse me, sorry to say.
I know. I do this. Like I can feel 100% confident in my session, and then I walk outside and go, excuse me, I just want to get some water. Oh, don't mind me. Thank you so much for having me. And all that's nice, and it's true. It comes from a place of like, I am grateful, and I don't really know how to express it, and I understand that this could all go away just a moment. Please bring me back.
Yes.
And also, but also like, hot damn, like I know my shit. And it's weird. I know that there are going to be people who be like, well, yeah, Morla, like you've been doing this how long? How come you don't? But it's like also like, I still feel really new. Yeah. I've been doing this a long time, but I still feel so new to Los Angeles. I'm less than 10 years in Los Angeles.
When did you get here?
2016. So, I still feel new, and I feel, I don't know, but I agree. It's like that thing. There's a part in me that's like, just accept that you have mastery. Accept that you are a master in the things that you do. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you're an expert on all things across the board. Doesn't mean that there's nothing left to learn.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you are mean to people.
No.
It just means just accept your mastery.
Yeah.
It's like, right.
Yeah. Accept your mastery.
Accept your mastery.
It makes you it makes you titanic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting up taller in this moment than I have this entire time. Like, there is something, and I guess that's what it is. Like, that's the feeling that you feel, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you encounter it, you feel it in somebody else. You feel the mastery, the power of that mastery, I suppose.
You're here doing. I was given an extraordinary gift from a teacher I had at UCLA Extension just recently. It's a marketing class, and it was like, it was the class I was least excited to take because, at the end of the day, if I get down to the quiet, the dark little spot in my soul, it's like I don't want to stand on the roof and crow about this credit and this credit, and I hate all that stuff.
Same.
And love it and hate it at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
And I showed him my website, and he was like, and then he was like, well, what's the purpose of your site? And I was like, well, basically it's to be a digital avatar for myself. And I was like, here, I said, I'll take you to my audio spot. This is where my voice reels are. And I played him my impressions reel. And his interaction with me went 180. And he was like, you're an actor in Los Angeles. Do you have any idea? And you've been making your living doing it. Do you have that is black diamond hard. That is like going off the hardest ski slope and what people want to be able to do, and you're doing it. He's like, so I listened to the stuff on your reel, and he's like, you need to explode. Your website needs to explode with the pride of the work that you have been able to accomplish over this period of time, any amount of time. It's not even 10 years, yo. Like being here 5 years, being here 3 years, being here 18 months, and being able to cover rent doing this work is one of the hardest things I can possibly. Is it harder than digging ditches? Backbreaking physical? No. But every other part of the job, yes. Yeah. Like sustaining and encouraging yourself and building a community, all that stuff. But so like that gift of just having the challenge of what we do acknowledged, in particular without having generational wealth behind us, like, yeah, man, thank you. But it changed how I approached and thought about my self-marketing. It changed how I thought about I completely transformed my website consequently.
Yeah.
And all that other kind of stuff. And I feel like that moment where you were just like, and you said I'm taller now than I have been this entire time. And you're right. I probably had to adjust the microphone to adjust to it. You're like, it was that and that sense. And I'm feeling it too, like this sense of confidence and it will all be fineness too that comes with that confidence.
Yes. Yeah. That like beginners, like seeing the world with like child's eyes, like the beginners not luck, but it's like the enthusiasm and the confidence of that. Yeah. It's a melding of all the things.
Yeah.
And I do feel like conversations like this, interactions with people in our community that we know and love and trust and lean on and let lean on us, that we uplift each other. And there's so many in our community who do. Like, how lucky are we that we are that we found our way into this particular community, right? And yeah, it is so uplifting. It's so uplifting. The time that I spent doing improv with you, and it was a brief amount of time, but I think back on that. I was like, oh, I want to get back to that so much. There was just so much aliveness. There was so much, I just felt myself like on fire and like everything connecting and everything happening in new and interesting ways, and the way that you had me even thinking about improv, like, because I always associate improv with going for the jokes,
Sure.
and thinking about improv not in that way was huge shift for me. Like, oh wow, this is like I crave that. I crave that so much. And just being in that group, in that like getting used to failing gloriously. And it's like no problem.
Yeah.
No judgment.
And the intention was never to make a great scene.
Yeah. Losing that
Yeah.
all of that is tremendous.
Yeah.
Like, I want that energy in every audition. I want that in every session. I want that in my life, just as I'm navigating my difficult personalities. Like, I get emotional again. I'm sorry. I'm a very emotional person. And this time it's all great. It's all just like, there's so much love in it.
Yeah.
There's so much love in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I find myself often in disbelief at the generosity of the community, the openness, the availability, and the belonging, the sense of belonging in a place that I was so nervous to come to. I didn't think I was ever going to belong here, but then finding that this is where I belong.
Yeah.
And that this belonging I didn't really feel in Chicago. I didn't really feel in Detroit or in Cleveland or in Grand Rapids. But it was like being around people who thought and felt and risked the way I was prepared to, and then realizing, no, I'm not alone the way I thought I was alone. You know, and that, you know, this show has been that for me too, of being able to, you know, connect to other people who feel that same way, who've either grown up here or grown up from points east or west, and you know, because it's a globe, and you know,
so
but
they
like
say.
So they say. We all know that New Zealand is, when you look at it, it's flat, it's close. Anyway, but the gift of this, of being in this place at this time among these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you decide? How did you know? How did you come to LA? Like, how did that happen?
Always wanted to.
Yeah.
Knew I wanted to be here. This is where it was, starting with probably Yogi Bear and Scooby-Doo, and seeing that Hanna-Barbera was in Hollywood, California. And I wanted to go really bad. We came out here when I was probably 4 or 5 for my cousin Jeff's wedding. They lived down in Orange County. And we went to Disneyland, and I have vague memories of that. But that wasn't what the draw was. Like, it was whatever time, and for so many people out here, it all cycled around Star Wars. And like, the movie meant something, but the special effects meant more. The making of it meant so much more to me. Like, oh my God. And then Thriller and all those things coming out, and the behind the scenes was so exciting. It just seemed like this is where all the cool things were, not just cool things, the things that I was interested and excited in were happening out here. And I didn't know how I wanted to participate in the world of making stuff. I fantasized to be visual effects artist. I fantasized about being an actor, all those things. I think Ghostbusters, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Marty Short, Eddie Murphy, those comedians, Robin Williams, certainly all inspired me to be like, I felt kindred spirits in them. And like, I see the world in that way. And I could make people laugh and stuff like that with doing bits. And I was like, I think that's where I need to go. My parents were like, there's no way you're going there. It's a godless Babylon. It's a godless Babylon. 2 ministers in the Christian Reformed Church, 2 uncles in the minister. Like, if you're an extrovert in Grand Rapids, Michigan, your path is the pulpit or you're going to be a teacher. And I was the firstborn, so I didn't really have many options. When I went to college, I had a professor who helped them see differently. And about filtered through the church, a church that I've left. I'm now Catholic, not the world's most practicing Catholic, but I've converted. But his perspective, and I still believe this too, and it's at the core of like, we're not called to be in the world and then distance ourselves from it. Like if you want to make a difference in this business or in any business, you need to be in it. You can't just be sitting on the outside judging it. And that was always like, I feel like if I could go into this industry, I can go and try to make people's lives a little bit better. That's it. I'm not interested I'm not interested at all in doing altar calls or converting anybody. I just want to make life a little bit better. And that was it. And my senior year of college, I took a semester out here in Los Angeles, and that was it. I was like, I'm going there.
Nice.
And then my spring semester, I got involved with a girl, and we ended up getting married, and we knocked around the Midwest for a while, and L.A. never felt like it was something that she wanted to do. And I pulled, and she would dig down deeper, and like when she graduated from grad school, it was I got a job here in Michigan, and I'm like, and there were other things and our lack of communication, also that kind of stuff. But when I started at Second City and started on a path, it was like that was when I finally got on the road to Los Angeles, even though it was a long and winding one. But
there was a connection. You could see the
through like
the route.
I had my first audition in Los Angeles for Punk'd, and I flew out for it and from Detroit and got called back and was out here for a week. And at that point, some friends of mine were already out here. Keegan Michael Key was at Second City, Detroit, and then he was at that time he was on Mad TV. So he was like, dude, let's hook up. Larry Joe Campbell had just gotten on According to Jim, and he was doing really well, so I saw him, and he was Second City, Detroit, hung around with Mark Evan Jackson, who's, also, so that was kind of our clutch. It was kind of like you come out here and here's your pack.
That's great. Yeah, that's so smart too. You don't even think about it in terms of that, but like the savviness and the benefit of having like a crew outside of Los Angeles and then like meeting up with that crew there. Like that's wow.
It was helpful.
Yeah.
It was helpful to know that you had people out here looking around for you. And then we went to Chicago after Sherry got done doing Alabama Shakespeare Festival. She did a 6-month tour duty there.
Okay.
And then we were like, well, let's go to Chicago. And we were in Toledo at the time. We're like just trying to, this is after we had done the stages at Second City. Like, let's just go and see what happens. We got to Chicago and got pregnant within 2 weeks. And I got a job teaching at Second City and then working for my friend Jeff Rogers and doing shows. And then I got into VO in a big way and started really booking a ton of commercial work. Chicago was a really great market for me.
Oh, that's great.
I got to do, and I got some on-camera stuff. And then it was, we had always said to each other, I don't want to move to Los Angeles without feeling that I'm in a position of power or without representation. Yeah. And I was able to make that. We made that move in 2011 and haven't looked back. And it's not to say that it hasn't been challenging, but at the same time, like it was better to be able to come out and audition on day 2 than to have to come out and try to figure that stuff out.
100%.
You know,
100%.
How about you? What was your journey to get here?
I was, I was in New Orleans, and then I went to Ole Miss, and then I went back to New Orleans, and then I moved to New York, and then I went back to New Orleans, and then I went back to New York, and then I moved to the Bay Area, and then Seattle, and then came out here. So
where was LA in your?
I was never
Really?
gonna come out here. It just didn't. It was not interesting to me at all. I came out and visited once. It just felt. The only thing I knew about it was like clubs and Velvet Rope and like it felt like a meaningless velvet rope, like the kind of velvet rope that you put up like there's no one inside the building, It's just like to create the impression of a crowd.
Yeah.
That was my experience. Like, no, it's just facades. It's all facades.
Yes.
And then I was in the Bay Area. I started working in games. And then I moved to Seattle, and then I really started working in games.
Yeah.
So much so that the local representation that I had was just not serving me.
Understood.
So I decided, I was like, well, I'm going to live in Seattle, but I'm going to have LA representation. And that was fine for a long time until it wasn't. And then it just so happened that everything just kind of worked out that the need, the desire, and the ability to move to Los Angeles came all at the same time. But it was for sure, like I had credits. I had game credits.
Makes such a difference.
So when when I'm coming down to LA, I'm like being invited on a tour of Treyarch as opposed to like going like, can I have
would be nice if
please, sir, can I have some more? Like, and it really made all the difference.
Yeah.
It really made all the difference.
Yeah.
Chicago, did you ever, were you ever familiar or get to see or participated in a long-form improv called Flanagan's Wake?
I know of Flanagan's Wake.
Yeah.
I never did it. I never saw it. I have a lot of friends, not the Chicago one, but they mounted it in Cleveland as well. And it really, after Second City left, it bounded that community together. The long-form show improv thing that I did was actually in Detroit called Tony and Maria's. There was Tony and Tina's, and then this was Tony and Maria's Italian comedy wedding. And their whole thing was we were the first ones. Tony and Tina copied us. But I was a swing on that. So I covered the priest sometimes. I covered the bride, I never covered the bride, but I covered the groom a couple times, and usually I was the best man. And it was ludicrous. It was great training for prank shows, for like working with the earbud and doing all that stuff. I did 3 seasons of David Spade's show Fameless, and
oh my gosh,
one of the bits has gone viral. It's the dumbest thing, but it was really great training and fascinating, But our time is rapidly coming to a close. Let me ask you this final question before I ask another final question. What's your, when people come up to you at conventions and panels or whatever, what's your everyone's got their pat go-to advice. What's your deep catalog advice? I asked this question at VO-Palooza, but I kind of like it. Like, what if you like? If it's like acting classes, of course, yes. Take some improv, learn some voice work. But what's your deep catalog advice that you give to people?
Well, there are two things. It's like if you're interested in voiceover, just generally, like all that encompasses, learn, spend a lot of time just playing, record yourself, listen to it, Never let anybody hear it. Know that like no one's ever going to hear it, but just like get used to the sound of your own voice. And then from that, you play. Understand where like your voice kind of sits normally, like what kind of archetypes your voice fits with.
Yeah.
What are the easy things? Like what's the low-hanging fruit for you to
Yes,
start?
yes.
And then from that, like learn how to start to expand and stretch and pull in different ways. But just play and listen and just get used to being in the booth with not having any kind of result.
Yes.
Or anticipating any kind of result.
Yeah.
And then the other is if you're specifically interested in games, I highly recommend learning about games, like learning how games are made. Like go to the Game Developers Conference, understand the pipeline, understand narrative and audio, and understand how each one fits and where they fit on the pipeline, because like you'll also understand like where you are valuable, what different like some teams still all the casting and all the directing is done through audio. Some it's narrative, and like understand which developers, like first of all understand the difference between a developer and a publisher, and like just understand the business. Like if you want to work in the business, you got to understand the business.
Yes.
Play games also is really important. And then networking. There's an organization called the Game Audio Network Guild, and they're wonderful. Like we talk about acting as a community, VO as a community within that, games as a community within that. Game audio is its own special little community that encompasses VO, and they're wonderful. They're a wonderful little organization, and they feel like family, and I love them.
Amazing.
And so those are my recommendations.
That's fantastic. How much within the game world do you procure through representation, or how much are you able to procure in terms of roles through your networking and relationships that you build within that world?
I would say, gosh, especially early on, like it was all my own stuff that I was bringing in. Like I would just through the relationships that I made, like understanding what people need and letting them and communicating to them how I can make their jobs easier. And how instilling in them this knowledge that I'm going to show up, I'm going to care, I'm going to love the project like they do, I'm going to be brave with them, you know, like this is their baby, it's my baby too. And developing a reputation of that. And like I have to say, it all starts from this one moment that I handed, like my whole career was set ablaze from this one moment that I handed a sound designer who I happened to think was like particularly good at the Game Audio Network Guild's sound design demo derby during GDC. It's like all the things compacted into one moment. And he was great. And I looked at him and was like, you were wonderful. And I know that sound design and VO hardly ever work together. But if there's ever a chance, here's my card. And sure enough, he hired me years later to do sound design, vocal sound design for the creatures of Destiny.
Amazing.
And then from that, I got the role of Eris Morn. And from Eris Morn, my whole career was set. I got Call of Duty because of Eris Morn. I mean, and from like it just branches out, and it all is just that I could have just as easily not. Boom. My career started in that moment.
Beautiful. Incredible.
Dude, be brave. Be brave.
Be brave. And don't walk into it. It's Harrison Ford has a line, I think it's in Patriot Games or Clear and Present Danger, but it says Jack Ryan. And he says, I'm not coming in here with my hat in my hand. And it's that idea of being bold, and saying, I can provide you a skill. I can provide you something that you need. And it's understanding that there's a need and understanding that we are in service to that need as a creator of emotional content and having confidence in that value that you bring to the table.
Knowing your mastery.
That's right. How can people find you on social media, follow you, do all that shit? Do all that shit. So dismissively. How can people, let me rephrase that. How can people connect to you in a meaningful way on social media and follow the exciting new things, the things that you share in your journey? What's the best way for people to engage you?
I tend to post about my work things, like I use Twitter, X, and I believe my handle is @actor_Morla. And I am also on Instagram. That's usually more just kind of like aesthetic, but it's fun anyway, and people tend to like Instagram more than Twitter. So that's @MorlaVox.
Awesome. Dude, this has been the greatest.
So fun. So lovely. I mean, all the emotions.
Yeah.
And
truly.
You are lovely to speak with. You make it so natural and effortless. You make it look easy.
Well, from the outset, it's always just been about conversations with other people who are walking this road. And that's it. And and talking to friends is always fun. And I love that what the other part of doing a show and being able to share the conversation with people, but then I mean, so much of my just personal relationships and networks and friends has been built where either we started in this context and then it's just been a blast. I love it. I'm glad to be doing more. So thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
So much.
And thank you for listening. More coming soon. Peace. This has been All Over Voiceover. All right. Hey, it's Kiff and Morla. We're back. Real quick, we wanted to talk about this exciting project that we are working on.
Oh, what's that called?
It's called Mars Express. It comes out in movie theaters on May 3rd.
Yeah.
And it's being distributed by G Kids.
Yes.
And we were directed by the wonderful, the talented, magnificent Michael
Sinter Nicholas.
Tell me about your experience working on Mars Express.
Oh man.
Because you're the lead. You're my former partner.
Yeah. Yes. I remember in the middle of the session, I got to, there's like a little bit of playback and like I can get read into my next line. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, is that Kiff? I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. It's so exciting. Yeah, Eileen Ruby.
How many sessions did you do?
3, 4, 3 or 4.
Cool.
I remember exactly. But I remember I got the audition it was over the holidays.
Yes.
The holidays. And I was like, oh, I read it wrong. I thought it was like due the day after Christmas. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to this. And I was like, okay. I was like doing it. I was in South Carolina. I'm like, I guess and I didn't have all the pieces to my travel rig. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. But I kept like reading it and like doing it like as I'm like trying to like, okay, I'm like, oh, this character's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And so then I recorded it off my computer and that didn't work. So I had to chuck it. And then I like recorded it off my phone. I'm like, this sounds terrible. And then I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just going to figure out. I was like getting ready to send it. And I looked at the date. I'm like, oh, I can actually, it's not due for like they gave us some time. That's great. So I can actually go home to my regular rig.
Yeah.
And I think like by the time I had read it so many times that I was
Yes.
like, oh, I felt like I was very familiar, like to whatever degree you can be very familiar with a character in the course of an audition, but
Yeah.
I had a degree of familiarity that I don't normally get to have after, because I just read it, put it down, read it, put it down, read it, put it down over the course of like a week or so, or even more. And so, and I don't know, the parts of it that I just kind of related to, and like I just felt like I feel like I connected with her.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what it was exactly, but I wasn't really fully aware of the enormity of this project.
Me neither. I still don't think I have taken its measure.
No.
And the last, I did a thing for G Kids before with Michael when I was in Australia, and I played, the primary role was Kay and Tomo's father in the movie Belle.
Oh yeah.
And I'd done a little bit of dubbing, not a ton, more live action than anime. But I just had the greatest time working with Michael and trying to find the emotional truth of this abusive character and find his humanity and find like it's such a crazy sequence in that film, and then some additional voices you just kind of knock out and get done and whatever. And with Roy Jacker, like the original voice is an actor whose work I adore. This actor named Matthew Almerac, who was in James Bond. He was in Spectre. He played the villain, but he was also Spectre, Quantum of Solace. But he's also in like The French Dispatch, Wes Anderson's picture, and in The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is a poem, spectacular film. Anyway,
yeah, Michael was absolutely wonderful. I'm just, and I presume this is like he does this for everyone. It just makes you feel so special.
Yeah.
And wonderful direction, and I just like absolute trust because he is a perfectionist.
Yes.
Like in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I know that there's no chance that this isn't going to be great, because he's not going to let it go, and he's going to make sure that it's just, he knows, he's got vision.
Yeah.
He's got auditory vision.
Yes.
and he was talk about mastery.
Boy.
And then I learned that from the director that I was talking about earlier, who was like, it's the character is going to be what she was telling me. She's like, I've been following this for years. I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like researching, and like, oh my gosh, it was Jérémy Perrin. Perrin, and I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. But I mean, what a talk about a poem. Like he's the work that he's done is just so beautiful, and this one in particular is it that it appeared at Cannes? Did it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
This is the fun part, or one of the fun parts of being involved in a project this late in the process, and one that you don't know, and then all of a sudden, like when I got the press kit for the announcement of the trailer and stuff, I was like, a press kit. And then opened it, and there's a picture of our characters. And up at that point, because you recorded after me, I didn't know that you had been playing that role. So I was like, what? Morla, awesome. But then we're the top billing, which was like you, me, and Josh Keaton. I was like, oh, what the heck? You know, and so like,
and there's so many wonderful voice actors in this. So many.
Remarkable. Like Greg Berger and so many people.
Mara.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just I'm just nerding out over it.
I know, and it feels like I can just imagine people outside of the industry be like, how do you not know? It's like, that's code names and although this didn't have a code name, but it's like you just you go into it expecting that you're not going to know until after it's released usually, right? So it's like, you just kind of drive yourself crazy if you do try to figure it all out, or you try to,
Totally.
And it's just like, let it go. It's like, it'll.
Yeah. Have you done much dubbing? Do you have much experience with that?
I mean, the first game that I ever did was that it was like a Japanese animation style, but it was a Russian developer.
Oh, wow.
So I was doing the English version of that.
Okay.
And then I've done some live action.
Yeah. Same.
But nothing that's gotten
attention. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, cool. It's
Yeah.
on Netflix. And so I'm like,
Yeah,
great.
that's it.
And like in theaters nationwide, I was like, oh. And then to find out that it's like not just your tiny little art house, but it's like AMC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that experience with Belle.
Yeah.
With I was in Australia when I recorded it. I was still in Australia when it was released, and it was released at the theater down the street at the multiplex. And it was released both in Japanese and then in English. And then I was like, wait, I worked on that. Holy cow, that's got a theater. Wow.
Oh, my God.
So I went to the theater to go see it and was just floored. And like, for those of you who are listening who have never done this work, when you're doing it, you're just hopping and skipping through the picture. You're lucky to get any sense. That's why I'm so excited to see the fullness of your work in it. Like, you're just like, because you're the first voice we hear in the trailer, and it's so rooted and grounded. I mean, I can't wait to see the picture. It was
Do you know how it ends?
Like this. This has been All Over Voiceover with Kiff VH, produced by Werewolf Therewolf. Please consider giving the show a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Look, I know I keep asking for a review, but if you found just one piece of info from me or my guests helpful, please share that with me and share it and help grow our VO community. Feel free to catch up with me on Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, or Vero at KiffVH, or hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Kiff Van Heuvel. Just search for Kiff. We probably know a couple of the same people. And check out my website, www.kiffvh.com, for my reels, updates, and to reach out to me directly for coaching or appearances. Claim victory and depart the field. Taxi? Taxi? I guess I gotta walk from here.